Everybody, I hope you're doing great. So, I wanted to make a separate video on the stellium that's going to be happening on October 22nd. This is going to be really powerful. This is a Mars, Mercury, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio coming together. We're certainly going to feel it on the 22nd, but you're going to feel the buildup. You're going to feel a little bit of if I say fallout, I guess that sounds negative, but there's going to be this crazy intensity to that particular week, especially. So I intended to do a separate video on it. So here we go. Now I'm going to just discuss it just generally, basically for all the signs, and then I'm going to break it out into each of the signs, starting with our Scorpio friends, okay? Because it is all about Scorpio, right? Don't we love Scorpio season? Getting ready for it to come up, right? Here we are in October. We're going to be going into Scorpio season, which is always like this. Scorpio season strikes, right? It doesn't just happen. It tends to strike. But let's talk about this Mars, Mercury, Black Moon, Lilith, stellium in Scorpio. Very exceptional point. Very psychologically charged configuration because it's bringing together that raw drive of Mars and that expression of Mercury and that shadow empowerment of Black Moon Lilith through intense and the very secretive, watery energy of Scorpio. So it's very connected to transformation, desire, power, but most importantly, truth. This idea of truth is going to be coming up. So this is something that we all have to be mindful of because we're all going to be feeling it a little bit of a different way, obviously, because of our house placements. But regardless of where it is, this stellium does produce your mind is going to be it's this penetrating kind of energy. And it's very fierce with a natural instinct to speak and act your truth, to speak and act from the depths of your energy, because this is very kicking up Scorpio in the biggest way. And Scorpio just doesn't tolerate anything that's superficial. Right? Scorpio wants authenticity. It wants control. It wants passion at the same time. And with that Mars energy there, Scorpio's traditional ruler, not the modern ruler is Pluto, the traditional ruler in its own sign, this energy is going to be very formidable. It's going to be very magnetic. It's going to be very lit up. And of course, Mercury sharpens this idea of strategy, perception, thought, while Lilith is in there injecting rebellion, excuse me, and honesty and very taboo breaking kind of insights, right? It's saying what we've been thinking but dare not say up to this point. It's yeah, and hanging out with Mercury, it's like thinking what we maybe should feel like, is this okay for me to be thinking this? So together, right, this is going to be bringing thought and speech with intensity, lots of conviction, fearlessness to confront or expose truths that are even very uncomfortable. And we're all this is the thing we have to remember. We're all going to be feeling it. Again, even though it's in a little bit of a different place, depending on your house placement, we're all going to be feeling this energy. So when everybody's wanting to speak their truth, right? So everybody needs to like take a little bit of a breath. Now, I do have to say that what's really nice about this, especially if you have this in a house that deals with like speech and articulation, anything like that, any of the air houses, right, which would be 3, 6, or 11, or wherever your Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini energy is hanging out, there's going to be a lot of very persuasive energy going on, very seductive. Just generally, this is a very psychologically astute kind of energy. So the voice can be very powerful. There could be a lot more comfort in challenging the norms, challenging social norms, challenging the norms of our any sort of authority figures. So there is this fearlessness about it, but also this verbal volatility or psychological warfare when the shadow aspects are triggered. And what would be considered a shadow aspect would be something underneath the surface, right? That we're feeling, that we're thinking, but it's been brewing. And maybe up to this point, we haven't even been totally clear on how we feel about something. Sometimes we feel it brewing and building, but we're just not sure well enough to sit down and articulate it with any sense of clarity. And that will be lifted, right? because you remember this Mercury energy with Scorpio and Mars. Let's just take that. The mind is very investigative. It's very strategic. It's very piercing. You're able to see beneath the surface of things. And with that Mars energy, thoughts are sharp. They are quick. Communication can cut like a knife. I always say that when we put Mars and Gemini or any air together, but Mars is a warrior, and his weapons when he hangs out with Mercury or words, and they can be really sharp, right? At the same time, though, because of this astuteness that we're going to be feeling, it's an excellent energy to research, to debate, and also to gain any kind of psychological understanding, whether it's about yourself or about a larger situation. And with that Lilith energy, your words can absolutely carry some sort of dark but very magnetic truth, right? You might speak about things that other people repress. It's also very easy for us to see what's wrong with everyone else in this energy, right? And so we're going to be very astute in being able to call out other people on their stuff just as long, and that's okay if it's done with kindness, right? Just as long as we're willing to get it back to us, right? Because remember, everyone is going to be experiencing this. So anything having to do with power situations, trauma, sexuality, death, right? And this can be very unsettling. It can be very unsettling for some of us, but at the same time, it could also inspire. As again, there's going to be a lot of truth coming out of it. And depending on the house placement, there could really be a real pull toward writing, towards psychology, towards activism, towards astrology, any sort of occult studies, any area where like even like forensics, right? Any area where the like taboo meets the intellect is going to be very, very lit up in this energy as well. I just with that Mars and Scorpio, I mean, Mars again, very relentless, very strategic, doesn't want to waste time, very attractive. We want to be careful of projection, and so I'm saying this to you guys, right? So you can be mindful of it, but not everyone will be mindful of it. So you may experience other people's projection as well. So you just want to be mindful of that, right? Because of this intensity. If people don't really understand what's going on, it could be a little tricky. But especially with this Lilith energy, it really emphasizes this idea of emotional sovereignty and fearless honesty about the darker side of things, the things that maybe we've been afraid to admit to ourselves, say out loud, right? That part that we've been afraid to say out loud. Now, there's typically a story of this idea of a reason why you're going to feel like you need to reclaim your voice after recognizing that you've been feeling very silenced, right? In a particular part of your life, or if you've been feeling misunderstood, or you've been feeling like, you are being punished for something, punished for, because it's Lilith, for your sexual nature, your proclivities, your anything having to do with your position in something as well. That silence is going to become very loud, right? And so if it's not released, it can be this increase in inner conflict where you might find yourself wrestling with some anger or some mistrust or some sort of power dynamics in communication or relationships until you channel that energy consciously. And you can absolutely do that consciously, right? If you know what listen, astrology, these positions, anything having to do with this, we are not puppets to this energy. As an aside, as an astrologer, it drives me nuts when people are like, well, I can't help it. I don't have any control. A lot more things that we have control over than we realize or that we would like to admit to, right? And so taking ownership here and understanding that our mind is is incredibly powerful, and our ability to make good choices for ourselves. And good does not always mean the easiest, right? But we have that power. So we just want to be mindful of that shadow and integration of these three together, because there can be this tendency towards verbal domination and obsession, even if you're not typically inclined to be that way. There could be some sort of power struggles that end up kicking up. Secret enemies could come out of the woodwork. There could be some sort of like besides language, is like a harsh vibe from other people. Suspicious energy could come up in communication, repressed anger that becomes this psychological tension. The tendency to manipulate or be manipulated can absolutely happen, but there's a lot of good that can come out of this as well. Again, it depends on how we approach it because this can bring this real strong desire to learn to speak the truth with compassion rather than control, and using your own personal insights to heal, to empower, and not to expose, not to gotcha, but to or destroy, right? Um, but to show empathy and to problem solve as well. So, this is about embracing your voice as a tool of transformation, not only for yourself, but also for other people. So, really approaching that week from that perspective will be very, very powerful for you because, again, that Scorpio energy, it is very connected to change and transformation. And we want to make sure that we're not, changing or transforming things that we actually mean to heal, okay, or mean or intend to make better. So hopefully that makes sense. So with that being said, let's break out into each of the signs. Hey, Scorpio. So we're going to start with you because this stellium is happening in your energy. So this Mars, Mercury, Black Moon, Lilith in your energy in happening in that first house for you. It's again, it's a transit. It's not a forever thing. Just be mindful. It's hitting on October 22nd, the exact, but we're going to be feeling it a bit before, a bit after. It's a very highly charged, very deeply transformative little time period for you. And since the first house is the house of self and identity and body, how you project yourself out into the world, this stellium really does electrify your personal expression and the way you take actual initiative in life, right? Because that first house does represent your initiative in the path that you're walking on. So let's just break these out, right, individually, and then we'll throw them together. So we have that Mars and Scorpio in the first. Mars is super strong here, obviously, since you guys are in its traditional rulership. You may feel more assertive, more bold, more magnetic. Others can sense this heightened level of intensity within you. Energy levels surge, but so can anger, so can impatience, so can that don't mess with me kind of energy. And so you might pursue personal goals with passion, unwilling to compromise with that Mars energy in Scorpio. And that's going to be all month long. That's not just with the stellium, but that's what's going on there. Now, when it comes to Mercury in your energy in the first, your communication style is very direct, very piercing, deeply insightful. And you may even ultimately uncover secrets, that have been sort of lingering, maybe that you've been kind of vibing, but then you call out and you end up being right, right? This is about speaking truth with intensity. You're going to have a very strong tendency to explore more taboo topics. And really, that's whatever that means to you. It could be the occult, it could be anything having to do with the afterlife, anything having to do with whatever the dark side of life means for you, okay? Conversations might feel heavier, a little more probing, a little more serious. Others can easily find you a lot more intimidating, very compelling, but intimidating at the same time. This is an excellent time, guys, especially for you guys for research, any kind of investigative work, cutting through illusions, excellent for therapy, just kind of getting to the bottom of things. Now, with that Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, again, in that first, Lilith in the first highlights themes of self-ownership, defiance of expectations, and raw authenticity. So you may project this aura of rebellion, of sexuality, of mystery, right? Which could be kind of like a cool thing, but we want to make sure that we're keeping it in check because this can bring up conflicts about how much of your power you allow yourself to show. And that could be, you could feel held back, or whether others react with, are they receptive or are they responding more with fear, some sort of fascination, right? To that heightened energy that you're going to be feeling. Shadow work around body image and autonomy and around just general anger, because it is in that first house. So it's a little bit of a wild card house. Any sort of anger that you might be feeling about the path that you're on, where your life is, these things can rise to the surface. So just simply be mindful of that. Now, when it comes to mixing them all together, having to do with the stellium effect, bringing it together, your words, Mercury, carry the force of action, which is Mars, and the uncompromising edge of Lilith, right? She takes no prisoners, right? So you may become really outspoken, challenging, unwilling to let others define you. There could be, as a result, some sort of encounter with authority figures, maybe even your partner or family members you may feel these like this power struggle. Now, others might project their fears onto you. They might project their desires and even their judgments onto you. So just be mindful of that. This is a period of radical self-expression, reclaiming your power and breaking out of any kind of past conditioning, responding or reacting, I should say, in ways that you've done in the past that haven't really helped you. This is a really good time to take ownership of that and have agency with it and say, I'm feeling this way. This is very real, but let me not react. Let me respond. Let me not be so reactive there. Because if you can do that, there is a strong potential for super high vibration energy to rear its head, where your charisma is off the charts, your courage is there, seemingly being very, very magnetic, and you'll have this ability to cut through the lies, cut through the BS and see the truth, right? And it's excellent, excellent energy for self-advocacy, starting any sort of bold venture that maybe you've been feeling a little nervous about starting. Excellent for creativity, creative intensity, but it's also absolutely amazing for healing any kind of shame that you might be carrying, having to do with really any part of your life, right? Um, we just want to be careful of the shadow vibration of the stellium. There's always that. There's always a light and a dark. And the shadow would be verbal conflict, being impatient, any kind of like destructive bluntness. You want to be careful of that. So there can be a tendency to push others away with intensity or trigger jealousy. Repressed anger can absolutely surface suddenly. And it's like suddenly, suddenly. So use the intensity consciously, Scorpio, right? Channel it into any sort of creative project, a workout, any workout regimen, that you might be involved in, any kind of research, any kind of healthy activism. Know where you're tempted to lash out versus where you can assert boundaries clearly. It's a really good line of delineation to be able to figure out here. So, and you want to watch out for this all or nothing thinking, right? Because you guys, just by your nature, you can tend to polarize, right? Have that, it's either this or that, all or nothing, black or white kind of thing. You just want to be mindful. And that's again, if you're tired, we all have shadow sides, every single sign. And that, if you're tired, there can be this polarizing kind of energy. So just be mindful of that and embrace the transformation, because this is such a good time to unapologetically own exactly who it is that you are. So I hope this was helpful for you for the week of the 22nd. Again, you want to keep in mind the calendar is man-made. So the energies up in the sky really don't care that much about the calendar. So a lot of you may even be feeling it as soon as this upcoming week starting, because they're within 10 degrees of each other. So you're feeling it already built. And you will probably be feeling it into the beginning of November. Okay, my friend. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Libra. I hope you guys are doing great. So let's talk about this Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith stellium, which is happening in your second house. And the second house has to do with resources. It has to do with your value system. It has to do with, and when I say resource, yes, it's money in your bank account, money from the work that you do. But it's also anything that you attach the word worth to. So it could be your couch in your bed. It could be second house is food, rules the mouth. Um, sense of self, self-esteem, very connected to your inner health as well. So let's just kind of open up first what each of these mean as an individual placement, and then we'll bring the stellium all together. So Mars in Scorpio, which is all about drive and action when it comes to your resources, because it's in the second house. This is a very focused on survival, money, security, right? And it's that Mars fiery energy. So you could become a little more competitive, a little more ambitious, even ruthless about financial situations. There could be a lot of intensity around debt, around shared finances, taxes, inheritance, and power over resources. Could certainly spark this kind of focus on justice in this particular area. Like, is A, B, and C fair when it comes to money, wealth, equity? If you tend to feel exploited or taken advantage of, or like you're getting the lousy end of the stick in a situation, this can absolutely spark that with that Mars and Scorpio, which, by the way, is going to be happening all month long. That's not just during the stellium. Now, we also have Mercury in Scorpio. Again, that Mercury energy, communication and your thoughts about money, about values, your sense of self, your self-esteem, your foundation as well, right? Because Taurus is the natural landlord of the second house, which is very connected to foundation. So expect with Mercury there conversations about money, ownership, what's right and wrong, hidden financial dealings, corruption, secrets about money, wealth, resources can absolutely be exposed here in the second house. Now, keep in mind, it opposes the eighth house, which is Scorpio's home. So, what can happen here is some sort of realization around finances with a partner because that eighth house is other people's money. So, it could be some sort of realization around shared resources. Now, you might be really analyzing your values with greater psychological depth, like really getting very deep about what it is that you believe, your relationship with money, having to do with your relationship to yourself, how it is that you view yourself. You know, this question of what is truly worth something to you, whether it's money, a home, your possessions, you'll know what I mean, right? If this message is for you. But just in general, there's going to be a lot more scrutiny of financial systems, whether it's the money that you're bringing in, whether it's your debt, whether it's how your taxes are structured, whether it's if you're involved in some sort of investment situation, whatever it is, right? The whole financial system, markets, governments even are going to be brought up, right, in your thought process having to do with all of this, with that Mercury in there. Now, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, it's all about shadow and rebellion, but rebellion in values first and foremost, because it's in that second house. So this is going to very easily, Libra, can bring up some sort of shame or taboo around money, around sexuality as currency, right? Again, because it's second house, eighth house opposition. So you know what I'm saying? Sexuality as currency, as a manipulation tool, or even really highlighting any sort of resource inequality. And that's very subjective, but you're going to know what it is that you're in. Do you feel like you're in an equitable situation or not? You know, how are you showing up? How is another person showing up? That kind of energy. There will be questions about self-worth versus external worth brought up. This is going to come up, especially where, you know, society tends to devalue certain groups. You're going to be questioning your position, you know, when it comes to society in general. But you can easily reclaim your power by rejecting those values and redefining your own standards of worth, redefining what it means to have a strong foundation in your life. But as this is happening, this could certainly trigger this kind of rage against like economic oppression, materialism. Again, going back to this idea of exploitation, of feeling exploited. Have you been exploiting somebody, taking advantage of somebody when it comes to any sort of resources, any sort of foundation, anything like that, it will rise up to be looked at. Now, the stellium effect, when we throw it all together, it's very concentrated when it comes to second house matters. So it's going to intensify the focus on resources, your survival, and your value systems, right? So you can feel the shift in how you're viewing money. They could also be a very outspoken kind of energy against whatever it is, whatever might be going on that feels unfair to you. Now, this could be unfair situations having to do with work, right? Meaning any form of labor, right? Labor conditions could be that. How money is being handled within your closest relationships, how money is being handled, and that includes like a family situation or even within like a marriage or a partnership. But there's certainly going to be a deeper looking at, who controls wealth and what's considered valuable, right? In your life, who's claiming to be most in charge and how is that being handled, right? But there's also going to be a redefining of your self-worth beyond material wealth. There's going to be this realization that and we could know this, but sometimes we need to be reminded that it can't just be about money. It can't just be about possessions. It can't just be about our security, right? Because we are worth more than that. Okay. Definitely. So there's a high vibe way of approaching this energy. And if you allow this in, stay open and invite it in, you will experience a very powerful courage to confront any sort of economic unfairness that's going on in your life and demand fairness. Have the conversations. This is a great energy for very deep psychological insight into your own values and your values versus maybe the values that you've been holding up to this point in your life, but also values compared to society, other people in your family. There's a period of empowerment through redefining your worth and your priorities. And with this comes a lot of innovation. So, innovation around money, around resources, possibly some breakthroughs in other avenues of making money, being able to move your whatever wealth you do have, moving it around to work a lot better for you. So, in these ways, this can be a very, very powerful time when it comes to your money, but also at the same time, this redefining and calling out the truth in this area, but redefining of your sense of self and your self-concept. So I hope this was helpful to you, Libra. Thank you so much for hanging with me. Enjoy the rest of your month, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey Virgo, I hope you guys are doing great. So for you guys, this stellium is in the third house, which governs communication, thinking, learning, siblings, neighborhood, local environment, your daily exchanges. So we have Mars, we have Mercury, we have Black Moon Lilith, all hanging out together, hugging each other in the sign of Scorpio in that third house. So there's a shift. There's a shift in speech. There's going to be a shift in thought and connection, and it becomes very sharp, unapologetic, and potentially very confrontational. So let's unpack this, okay? Let's just talk about the Mars and Scorpio first, because this is very connected to drive and action in that third house energy, which would be communication. Very confrontational. Remember, our siblings and our extended family and our neighbors are in this space. So words and ideas can take on a lot of power, a lot of edge, and a lot of aggression in this energy. You can be more outspoken, a lot more blunt, have a very cutting edge to whatever it is that you're saying. This could bring arguments, not even going to lie, heated debates, verbal confrontations. Okay. But the upside of this is that you could feel very emboldened to speak truth to power in this energy, where you're finally like getting off your chest what's been brewing, what you've been a little too polite to talk about, right? And then we have that Mercury and Scorpio energy, which is, mind and speech in depth. So communication, very probing, very investigative, very uncompromising with that Scorpio energy, right? Hidden information, secrets, taboo topics can come out. And we could be feeling this, especially in the third house. especially people who are involved in any kind of media, news, anything like that. But we may also be realizing things, right? For those of you, Virgo, like things in the media, news, local dialogues, thinking about all of these things a lot more differently, a lot more deeply, with a lot more honesty, a lot more depth. But your thinking is very sharp here, very sharp, more suspicious, a lot more mistrustful. You know, this is like, this is the kind of stuff, especially with Lilith here, where there could be these psychological truths and scandals and conspiracy-like narratives coming out, right? This is absolutely what we could be vibing sort of underneath the surface here. And we also have Lilith, right, in Scorpio, which is all about shadow and defiance. And this would be in the area, again, third house of speech, of siblings, extended family, right? Just the daily workings of day-to-day life. So Lilith brings up, though, that suppressed voice, right? She doesn't allow it to stay down, especially when she's hanging out with Mercury. There's no way, and even in Scorpio here, especially of people, those of you who have been feeling silenced or dismissed from siblings, extended family members, anyone in your day-to-day environment. If you've been feeling dismissed, Lilith in this stellium is just going to be bringing it up. Lots of taboo because she's very connected to the taboo. So taboo topics like sexuality and abuse and money and corruption and gender roles and family roles may suddenly dominate your dialogue, you know? Things that you're talking about. So this can make you very outspoken, very rebellious against feeling censored. You know what I'm saying? Like feeling like you can't say that, you can't go there, it's not worth it. And even if you've been feeling up to this point, oh, it's not even worth it to broach that thing with that person, like it's falling on deaf ears. If it's really in your heart, you're going to feel like you need to get it out because this oppressive kind of feeling when it comes to what it is that you're allowed to say and not allowed to say is really going to rise up, right? So there could become this real, very raw discomfort with unacceptable truths where you want to say the quiet part out loud. It's absolutely, that's what's going to be happening. Now, you're going to be feeling those for a lot of the month, just in general, right? But just having to do with this particular stellium effect in the third house, communication becomes a weapon and a tool of empowerment. It's a weapon because it becomes very sharp, right? Because Mars is a warrior, and when it hangs out with Mercury, especially in the third house, right? Because that's where Gemini hangs out, or it's Gemini's home, and that's where Mercury lives, right? One of the two houses that Mercury naturally lives in. Those words become weapons. Our tongue becomes a weapon. Okay. So, but it's also a tool of empowerment, of truth, of being able to communicate and heal things. So there could be this rise within you of, your inner activist voice, right? Where your speech can be a little more radical than maybe you would normally have. There is a bit of a whistleblower element to this, where you're protesting things and you're delivering truths, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's going to just be this real move to just dump out, right, what's on your heart. It's just going to be. Now, the third house is very connected to all kinds of communication, like media, right? And anything that's local. So local news, local technology, anything like that. So I do want to just say this, that if you are on social media, if you're involved in media, if you're involved with, connecting with larger groups of people, this energy can bring like a bit of a battleground for truth and power. So there can be a real beautiful high vibe energy to this, though, which can bring powerful truth telling, lots of courage to name what's been silenced, right? In any of those third house areas that I've been talking about, very deeply transformative kind of energy when it comes to conversations that cut through the BS, that cut through the fog, the superficiality. empowerment of any sort of marginalized voice that you've been having, any sort of radical issues that you've been keeping quiet, any sort of alternative perspectives that you've been keeping on the down low. You are not going to want to do it anymore. It's going to be like, I had it up to here, right? So just make sure that's going to be happening, but you want to just make sure that you keep your mind and just and keep your strategy on the end goal, right? Because if the end goal is to be seen, is to be heard, you want to make sure that you're not coming off as like, "Ah," right? Because no one's going to want to listen to you. So exercise empathy, have grace, but make sure that you're speaking your truth because the shadow vibe of this energy is this escalation, especially in this house of verbal tension and misinformation and polarized debate. So when you're engaged in this communication that you will be engaged in, you want to make sure that you're being very honest and that calling out misinformation and that you're being very honest yourself. Another low vibe manifestation of this could be just the weaponization, right, of words in general, using words to manipulate, using words to shame, using words to control. Not a good energy here. You could be the one giving this out, or you could be the one on the receiving end, having to do with anything that's scandalous. Now it's third house, so it could be a little scandal in your neighborhood, something scandalous in your family, that gossipy, rumory, that tension that deals with other people, right? It's not only you. It's like that collective kind of tension from something, but it may not be all based in truth. And you're going to be vibing it because you're Virgo and you're very smart, right? So there could be this rise of suspicion, of paranoia, and just a general breakdown in trust and communication systems. That is if you let this energy wash over you and you're not mindful. But keep in mind the high vibe, right? The powerful truth telling, the empowerment of voice, the honesty, the truth. And don't let yourself get hoodwinked or or not even going to say sideswipe, but off track from what the truth is. Don't let anybody do that to you, right? Stick with your truth, have grace, and vent it, right? It's a really good energy to actually do that. But just with Mars and just the combination of these energies is really going to have like this, why does it have to be this way kind of energy? So we have to just pull ourselves back, call ourselves out. Let's label it what it is and say, okay, I'm going to use this energy in a positive way. I'm going to speak my truth. If somebody's trying to manipulate me, I'm going to calmly call them out on it. I'm going to call out the misinformation. I'm going to call it what it is, but I'm not going to be hysterical because no one's going to want to listen to me then. Okay. All right, my friends, I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hey Leo, hope you guys are doing great. So let's talk about this stellium for you guys. It's in your fourth house. So we have this Mars, Mercury, Black Moon, Lilith, stellium in Scorpio in that fourth house, stirring up for a lot of you these very deep emotions, right? Because that fourth house is very emotional. It's where Cancer lives. It's where the moon rules. It's all about water. So these deep emotions having to do with fourth house energies. So it could be ancestral patterning, old situations that happen in the family, anything domestic, right? Deep feelings having to do with the domestic sphere, any sort of emotional energies, because this is where like hidden family or cultural dynamics come to the surface, right? This is what can bring up right to the surface. Your emotional foundations, how emotionally secure do you really feel? And then even thinking about this idea of like belonging and home and what does that actually even mean, right? So let's first talk about each of these individually and then we'll blend them together, right? In the stellium. So this Mars and Scorpio energy, action and drive in that fourth house energy when it comes to roots, defending home. And now this could be your actual physical home, your homeland, like your country, your family. There can be a heightened domestic conflicts in this energy just because of the trio that's going on. So this could be in both your personal household, but also something that you're feeling extra sensitive, even a little more sensitive than the other signs when it comes to, again, your homeland, your country. There could be a very strong desire to cut ties with old family patterns or ancestral burdens that you might be carrying. And you could feel very motivated towards rebuilding a foundation, toward confronting any sort of generational wounds, protecting what feels sacred to you, anything that feels really, really sacred. Now, let's talk about Mercury and Scorpio because this is mind and speech in the private sphere, right? Because fourth house is very private. So communication kind of turns inwards here. Family secrets, ancestral stories, hidden histories, all kind of rise up to the surface to be looked at, right? Now, this can manifest for many of you as uncovering suppressed cultural histories that you have, really looking at your family, really looking at, some of you on a broader scale, any sort of like national history, right? National culture. But for a lot of you, it's just going to be very, very deeply interpersonal and really looking at family dynamics and the dynamics of your first family, your early environment, and where it is that you want to go now in that particular area. Okay, emotional conversations certainly intensify. Dialogue with family or within communities can feel very transformative, very raw, very probing, right? There's no filters with this energy. So when it comes to having conversations around home, property, real estate, your emotional security, the idea of home and family, there's no filters here, right? So lots of narratives that we're going to be really looking at and opening up. Now, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio, very much about like shadow and rebellion, but when it comes to your rooted energy. So Lilith can bring up family shame, can bring up ancestral wounds, these forbidden truths about where we come from, right? They could be this sort of railing almost against patriarchal like family structures, really looking at cultural conditioning, suppressed histories. Why do you do what you do? Really looking at where you come from. And not that it's going to be that, oh my gosh, I can't go to work today because I have to think about like my ancestral patterning. It's not like that. It's going to be happening in a very interpersonal way. Um, it's almost going to be an energy that's hitting you that you can't escape from. But this is a good thing, guys, because whatever's rising up, you want to really look at it because this is an energy that's asking you to reclaim your right to define family, to define home, belonging, but on your own terms. That's what Lilith wants us to do. So any sort of hidden rage or hidden tensions, just any tensions really within the family system, right, can come up to be looked at so that you can essentially redefine what your new normal is in that particular area. Now, let's take this as the stellium, because when we bring these all together in the home of roots, right, and in that space, family power struggles and unspoken dynamics can absolutely rise to the surface. The shadow side of all of that, right? What we inherit emotionally, culturally, right? How our family works, and really looking at any shame that might be attached to that. There could be a lot of very fierce debates. A lot of you can find that you're debating a lot um, about what you feel like the right thing is when it comes to home, property, real estate, emotional security. What is the right thing? A lot of you taking it even outside of that, you could find yourself caught up in debates about homeland and territory and belonging and all of that and the like there. But you're going to be feeling this push towards transforming the way that you relate to home and to family systems. You're going to be all about breaking the cycle, reclaiming autonomy, right? And voicing silenced truths, things that you've known, but maybe you didn't feel brave enough to say, or you didn't want to offend anyone. It's just time to just speak the truth. There's a right way to speak the truth and right and wrong, right? That's so subjective. But understanding what is the point to voicing the truth ever? It's to allow the truth to come out, feel essentially some sort of validation so that things could move forward differently. But if you voice that truth through anything violent or accusatory or demeaning, you're not going to get that outcome that you want. And that's why I'm making this video, because the rise in the emotions are going to be there. But I want us all to just take a deep breath. And when you take a deep breath in, breathe a little deeper, belly breath out. Do it 3 times and then respond. Don't react. Okay? Because this could be a really good high vibe energy. It absolutely can, because there could be generational healing that goes on here through honest conversations about the past when it comes to family. And even if it's just that you realize you do A, B, and C because of where you come from. And maybe you're realizing in yourself, you know what, maybe I've been leaning and using that reality as a crutch rather than unpacking it and using it as a solution. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's not about blaming anybody, it's just about putting it all in context and having that open conversation, or recognizing this in someone else and saying, you cannot keep using that excuse anymore. We have to figure this out, right? Breaking cycles of silence, of shame, of repression, and just reclaiming this energy of empowerment and this courage. You're going to feel very courageous to redefine home and family and what it all means on very authentic terms for you. But there is that shadow element, and there is that tension that we just want to be mindful of family rifts, of resentment, disputes, having these conflicts having to do with I mean, don't get into any sort of political arguments with anybody. Feel very secure in your beliefs, very secure in your beliefs, and just be comfortable with that. And, don't even bother trying to change anybody's minds, whose mind doesn't want to be changed. You get what I mean, right? But you want to make sure that you're not suppressing any anger from the past that can end up re-erupting in some sort of destructive way. And just watch out for that emotional volatility within, the family structure within the home, because it doesn't have to be volatile in this energy. It just doesn't. You really want to use this energy to dig deep into family stories, ancestral history, confront any sort of intergenerational trauma to the end goal of not repeating any sort of destructive cycle, right? And on a collective level, just generally, like all of you guys, right? Having these good conversations about what is your truth when it comes to your understanding of your family and your history, and just having this conversation. So, in the end, this stellium is like a storm at your roots. It's going to stir up these hidden family and ancestral energies, demanding that you face what's been buried. It's going to be pushing you towards this healing of long-term wounds in this area, reclaiming narratives of what home and family mean to you, what emotional security means to you, even if it means breaking away from old patterns, because this energy is only bringing up what needs to be looked at and changed, nothing else, right? So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Cancer. I hope you guys are doing great. So, this stellium, Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio is happening in your fifth house. And this has a very different flavor than for a lot of the other signs. That fifth house rules creativity, it rules romance and sexuality, children, joy, self-expression, entrepreneurial efforts, vacations. monetizable talents, your hobbies, just your general joy in anything that you create, right? So with these together in there, right? These three in a stellium is very potent, very magnetic, sometimes a little turbulent energy. That can supercharge your desire, your passion, your strong drive for artistic energies, whatever it is. Well, let's break these down first individually, and then we'll talk about the stellium. So let's start first with that Mars and Scorpio in the fifth house. This brings a huge surge of energy into your love affairs, into dating, into self-expression. I'm going to do a little extra when it comes to this fifth house energy when it comes to love, but let's just speak in general first, talk about the stellium, and then we'll get a little more specific. Is there's going to be a lot of heightened desire here when it comes to passion, your pursuit of pleasure, and joy, just joy and happiness. This can make you a lot more magnetic, but also more prone to drama. Just a little heads up there. So it can kick up some competitive energy in creative fields or even when it comes to risk taking in romance, right? We just want to be careful of the shadow here because the shadow could be jealousy, possessiveness, any sort of power game having to do with love. Okay, that's that Mars energy in there. Let's talk about Mercury. Mercury and Scorpio in the fifth house. Mercury is all about the mental, right? So it's deep obsessive thoughts about fifth house energy, romance, pleasure, creative projects, your own business, whatever it is, intense conversations about these things. So intense conversations in love affairs. Words can be seduced, right? Can be very seductive, but can also cut like a knife. So we have to be a little careful there, right? There could be a possible tendency toward taboo communication, seductive communication, like flirtations, hidden relationships. That could be a little tricky. Very, very good though for creative writing, for those of you who are into writing. It's also a great transit for any kind of creative research, performing arts, anything that needs that deep psychological connection, that deep psychological depth, very good there. Now, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in the fifth, she brings raw, unapologetic themes of sexuality, of creativity, and desire into the spotlight, right? Remember, it's that fifth house energy. That's where the sun rules. That's where Leo lives. It's like center stage, that kind of energy, right? So there could be a real refusal to play by society's rules in love, in artistic expression when it comes to your joy and happiness, when it comes to how you're working your business. Oh, by the way, fifth house, how am I not saying this, is also children, right? It's also children. Anything, again, anything that we create. So with that Mars energy in there, we also do have to be a little cautious of, potential arguments with our children as well, or arguments about or around the idea of children. But that Lilith energy can also just, besides children, it could also stir conflict around the idea of fertility or parenting, something about rejecting imposed roles, right? Anything like that, like reclaiming authenticity in how you handle fifth house energy and how you reclaiming your energy around children, around how you play, around how you nurture, around how you love, just trying to reclaim your energy there. Black Moon Lilith is really going to bring a highlight. So that Mars Mercury Black Moon Lilith, I mean, that's going to kind of be going on all month long, but the stellium here, let's talk about bringing this together. And again, on the 22nd, it's going to be exact. We're going to be feeling it, a bit before, a bit after. But when they converge, romantic intensity skyrockets, right? Passionate encounters can easily feel very faded, very obsessive, very transformative at the same time. Could also have a lot of creative breakthroughs here, very possible, having to do with art, performance, writing, right? May tap into, like, especially you could really tap into anything that would be considered like shadow or taboo, or any kind of raw truth, right? Where that's what you're focusing your writing on. Sexual energy is very powerful, but needs a conscious redirection. Because that mix of Mars, which is desire, and Mercury, which is thought and speech, and Lilith, the forbidden, can spark exciting but very volatile relationships, right? Where it's very hot and sexy and exciting for a minute, and then it's like, oh my gosh, what kind of toxic muck do I have myself in, right? So we have to be careful of that shadow energy. Now, the shadow can bring power struggles in love, in risky behaviors, in the attempt to have fun, secret affairs, destructive competitiveness. Ooh, we just have to be on the lookout for that, right? So just a little heads up for this transit. You do want to channel that intensity into creative projects or passionate hobbies. Scorpio here loves, loves, loves depth, right? Anything involving like transformation, psychology, research, anything like that, right? That's a really good way of focusing it. You do want to be mindful of communication in romance because that Mercury in Scorpio can cut very deep. And with that Lilith energy there, words can be liberating or wounding. So you want to make sure that you're building bridges and you're not burning any down. And this is also a time for very authentic self-expression. So don't censor yourself, but try to balance raw honesty with care, right? Exercise that empathy. And if love or attraction feel obsessive, you really want to ask if this is empowering you, meaning that relationship, that energy, or is it consuming you? Right? You have to kind of figure out where that is. So this stellium in the fifth is like creative fire meets shadow truths, right? It could bring electrifying romance and art, but it can also test how well you handle your passion, your power, and also your play. Okay. Now I want to break this out having to do with those of you dealing with relationship. So we'll talk about if you're single, if you're in a relationship. We'll talk about like the different iterations of relationship. But if you're single, this is going to bring lots of magnetism, right? So you may really attract very intense admirers, right? Or feel very drawn to another energy in a very powerful way. But there could be like this element of mystery about them, right? Your flirtations could be super sharp, really funny, like you're just like a little witty, and even a little bit of provocative, right? Right? Having to do with that Mercury and Lilith. Encounters can absolutely feel fated. They could feel taboo. They could feel hard to resist, but they could also be short-lived or dramatic if Mars dominates, right? So the reason why I say it like that is because I don't know your personal birth chart and what else is going on, excuse me, in your fifth house. So, you just want to be just a little heads up there. But you may find yourself very drawn to relationships that challenge societal norms or to exploring your authentic desires unapologetically, right? For those of you who are single. Now, for those of you who are dating somebody, but it's pretty casual, you want to expect conversations that are going to be going deeper. They're going to become a lot more revealing, get to know each other more, secrets come out. You'll want the truth and intensity. So small talk and surface level nonsense, it's really not going to cut the mustard for you, right? So attraction could easily and very quickly escalate to obsession or power dynamics if you're not careful, right? If that's not balanced out. So you might be tempted into very passionate but very risky affairs or relationships where jealousy and possessiveness flare up, right? So you're dating, but then it's like suddenly taking a turn. You really want to ask yourself, where is this coming from, right? It's because it's likely coming from a place of fear and wanting to not feel that very deeper fear. So it's a great energy for exploring what kind of intimacy and passion actually fulfills you and looking to see if this dating situation you're in, if they're actually it for you, right? Now, if you're established and you're partnered, passion in the relationship energy intensifies. Sex and romance can be super magnetic, rekindling desire, this really great reconnection. On the flip side, also, suppressed ideas, jealousy, control, secrets can absolutely come out. It depends on where within your relationship you're at. Because Mercury adds this kind of verbal edge. So you're going to talk about things that you haven't felt comfortable to talk about. whatever it is. It could, for a lot of you, it could be fantasies or long unspoken resentments, whatever it is. But if both partners are open, this could be such a powerful energy of healing and creative bonding. If not, the conflicts could spiral into an out of control drama, right? Um, at the same time, creative projects shared with a partner can flourish. Intimacy can absolutely flourish if you guys have the communication, right? Especially if you're both involved in transforming something to another level, right? So it really could be a great energy there. So, yeah, just bold breakthroughs. Shadows can become if anything shadows, anything hidden in the dark can ultimately become healing in the fifth house. There could be connections, or those shadow elements can even become art in the fifth house, right? It could even become art, where you're taking that shadow element and it's like you're taking lemons and you're making lemonade out of it. The energy is all here. It is available for you. All right, my friends. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye. Hi, Tam. I hope you guys are doing great. So let's talk about this Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith stellium happening in your sixth house, which is the house of daily routines, health, work environment, habits, and service, right? And when I say health, it's mental, physical, emotional. So with this Scorpio here, the energy is less about romance and creativity. It's less about that, but it's more about transformation through discipline, through health, through work dynamics. So before we talk about the stellium, let's just break each of these Mars, Mercury, and Lilith out in Scorpio out into individual energies, and then we'll mix them together. So this Mars and Scorpio energy in the sixth, it's a very intense drive for stamina, for work, productivity, taking better care of our health. I love, love, love Mars in the sixth house when it comes to having the energy to work out, to feel a lot more motivated, to be involved in any sort of health routine, but also anything having to do with service, right? Gives us this energy for work, gives us this energy for it's like this all or nothing vibe, which is very Scorpio, right? Let's just go for it. And there can be some possible conflicts with coworkers, employees, authorities in the workplace could certainly be that. And there is a strong potential for burnout if energy isn't paced. So that's just something to be a little mindful of, right? Because Mars here can absolutely push you to overexert yourself, to overcommit, to have too many balls in the air at the same time, right? And you guys are very good at multitasking, but even Gemini has its points. So just to be mindful of that. Now, Mercury and Scorpio in the sixth. Mercury is all about the mental realm, right? Mercury loves the sixth house. It's one of the domiciles there, right? Because he does rule, Virgo lives in the sixth house and Mercury rules Virgo. So your mental focus sharpens on problem solving, details, hidden inefficiencies in your daily routines, things where you just can be like, wow, there's so many, it's easier. There are easier ways, there are easier methodologies that I could use, right? All these things are going to be, you're going to be realizing a lot of these things. And you might also uncover some workplace secrets or some sort of hidden agendas, discovering some sort of power struggle. And if that is for you, like the power struggle thing at work, you're probably vibing it already. And you probably started vibing it a couple of weeks ago. But this is an excellent energy for research, doing investigation, anything like that, like deep study of getting to the bottom of something, right? Could be psychology, could be health, but anything that you have to get to the bottom of. Communication at work can get intense. I'm not going to lie, right? Could be intense, could be very persuasive, but it could also be very cutting or confrontational if you're not careful, okay? If you're not careful. So just if you know the energy is coming, just be mindful of that. Now, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in the sixth house can really create some challenges around conformity at work, right? Because remember, Lilith, she doesn't really like to conform. So you may resist being micromanaged or boxed into routines that don't feel authentic. And I should probably just put a period at the end of that sentence because in general, you really don't dig being like boxed in. You don't. But that Scorpio in the sixth, a lot of times I will say it's probably better to do work where you have some sense of autonomy, some sense of being able to do things your own way. But we do what we can do, right? Then taboo or shadow themes can absolutely surface just in your daily life or health. Um, any sort of hidden stress could come up to the top, psychosomatic patterns, that connection between body and mind and emotions and how we're handling it, right? So circumstances just like basic where if there's a lot of anxiety or a lot of stress, are we eating the wrong foods? Are we, drinking? Are we doing, not exercising, right? Whatever those things are, looking at how are we handling all of those things, right? And being very honest about it. Lilith here can also make us feel, it can make us feel very rebellious towards any sort of hierarchy. I want to say in the workplace, yes, but just even in life in general, um, there could be some sort of rebellion against that. And when I say life in general, I mean, like, let's just say your service around your home or just in your life. And the idea of hierarchy and responsibility and assumptions and how who should be doing what and is everybody doing what they're supposed to be doing. You're really not going to have the stomach for that, right? Also, any sort of traditional health regimen that you might have been following, don't be surprised with Lilith here if you just don't feel as into it. Mars makes you want to exercise, makes you want to work out. But with Lilith here, you might want to do something a little more non-traditional. So if you're somebody who would normally like go and take classes at the gym and maybe do some weights or whatever, maybe you're going to feel, no, I want to just do, I don't know, Tai Chi or yoga or just approaching it from a different perspective. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. But Lilith here can also make you feel very called to embrace your instinctual rhythms. You know what I'm saying? Like that voice within you, what feels right, instead of forcing yourself into a mold or a situation that just doesn't fit. Like you just know it's not you. And embracing that and just being like, yeah, this is who I am. I don't fit in that mold. Just because everybody else likes to do it, that's just not me. And you're going to be totally okay with that. Okay. That's that Lilith in the sixth. Now, the stellium, mixing it all together, having to do with the workplace and daily routine manifestations. Again, this Mars of hard drive, productivity, assertiveness, Mercury, intense conversation, debate, Lilith, refusal to play by the hierarchical rules. Bringing it together is going to be pushing you to restructure your work habits, stand up for yourself in any sort of power dynamic that you might be, involved in, and to just cut ties with any kind of toxic environment. You're going to be so much more focused on like, is it doable in a way that's going to bring me peace, or is this going to constantly be a battle kind of thing, right? I'm really just looking for the peace in things, honestly. Okay. Now that's when it comes to where it comes to your workplace, right? That lens having to do with the sixth house. Looking through the lens of health and wellness, the outcome here could be a very high potential for transformation through holistic or shadow work approaches, right? Healing that addresses not only your body, but also your psyche, and really understanding the connection between your body and your mind, like in a deeper and very different way, which can be great. So the daily life schedule could feel a little chaotic, but very transformative. So you might need to just cut out some toxic patterns or toxic habits. For some of you, even toxic environments that you've been very involved in. The shadow side of this could be resentment coming to the surface, resentment in work, resentment in any kind of service role, or even you can feel overly critical of yourself or rebelling against a routine in a very destructive way, where it's like the very thing that you need to stop doing, you actually lean into it more. There's potential for that. That's the shadow of that. So I want to just call it out so that you don't do that, right? Much better to channel Mars in a constructive physical outlet, whether it's exercise or even if it's just like some sort of disciplined work project, right? In that sixth house. And you want to use Mercury to investigate and research health or productivity hacks. How can you make your life easier? Just don't allow yourself to go down that obsessive thinking, anxious hole, right? You just want to be mindful of that. Allow Lilith to show you where you've been suppressing your needs in your work, in your health life, and reclaim that autonomy over your daily rhythm, right? Who you really are. And just be mindful. Just be mindful of the power dynamics at work. Choose your battles carefully because at the end of the day, it's not worth picking, running away with every single battle, right? So the integration of the stellium, you just, stress and work could manifest in the body, vice versa. If you're overworking, your health may force you to slow down, right? Some situations coming up, whether it's anxiety, depression, some sort of health situation could come up. But this transit is going to push you to shed what is no longer serving you. Whatever that unhealthy thing is, whether it's unhealthy routine having to do with your health, draining job, toxic coworkers, whatever it is, because this allows you to find strength in claiming some sort of non-traditional wellness practice or in reshaping your career path towards something a lot more authentic for you. Okay, so if it shows up in health, channel the energy. If it shows up in work, choose your battles, right? Just use Scorpio's gift. Purge what's toxic and keep what empowers you. Because there is a very strong, powerful energy here. So to be had, right? So I hope that helps, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Hi, Taurus. I hope you guys are doing great. So let's talk about this stellium of Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith transiting your seventh house. This is going to be hitting in the realm of relationships, partnerships, marriage, contracts, one-on-one dynamics. The seventh house is also your energetic output at work. It's also your doctors, okay? So this is where we project and mirror ourselves through other as well. So this stellium can feel for you guys very raw, very magnetic, very transformative when it comes to your closest bonds. So before we talk about the stellium, let me just break out Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in the seventh house individually. So that Mars energy in Scorp in the seventh house heightens passion and desire in relationships. So sparks can fly sexually, emotionally, right? There could be this, it just is a heightened kind of energy. So it can bring conflict over power struggles, especially if there are any unspoken resentments between you and your closest bonds. So it'd be a very strong desire for a very strong intensity for truth. Surface level partnerships will not do. You want truth, you want depth. There's a lot of desire for depth here. So you could attract partners with strong, very forceful personalities or ones that end up bringing out that side in you, right? Again, this does not have to be a romantic connection. This could be a boss or bosses, anyone that you're involved in any sort of contractual agreement with. This could even be a best friend, anyone that you have some sort of shared soul purpose with, okay? So lots of fiery energy in there. Then we have Mercury. Mercury is air going into it's air and earth. Going into Scorpio, that's seventh house energy. Conversations with seventh house energies. So partnerships, right? They can get deep, probing, potentially confrontational, and you could easily uncover secrets or hidden truths in relationships. Sharp, very persuasive communication can be going on here, but also there is a risk of harsh words and jealousy or suspicion. This can absolutely help those of you who are in some sort of partnership, whatever the partnership is, can help you work through issues if both sides are open to deep honesty. Okay. It's that Mercury energy that is going to be in there, regardless of the stellium, it's going to be in there all month long. Now we have Black Moon, the Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in the seventh. Unapologetic she is, right? Very raw in partnerships. And when I say raw, I mean raw truths in partnerships. So dynamics around power, sexuality, independence, these could all become a thing. This can also reveal where you've suppressed your needs in relationships or where shadow desires influence connections. So you want to, your marriage might be great, your partnership might be great, but this might reveal itself when it comes to your boss and when it comes to good friends. So you can easily attract people. It could be a partner, it could be just other people close to you who embody taboo or rebellious or unconventional qualities within themselves. But it's going to push you to redefine what equality means, what commitment means on your terms. Right. Especially as that seventh house opposes the first house, and that first house is the house of self. So we have this sitting in opposition to the path that you're walking on, to that sense of self that you have. So if something is feeling very contrary to your natural sense of self, you're absolutely gonna have to speak truth to power when it comes to this, right? So the stellium of this effect in the seventh is relationships, romantic business, or otherwise can become the crucible for transformation, very connected to other people. This can highlight very magnetic attraction. So you may draw in very powerful, intense people, which can be amazing. There can be a very strong possibility here of arguments, though, but also breakthroughs if truth is embraced. See, it's all about how honest and open we're willing to be, or how much weight we're going to allow fear and pride have in all of this, right? Because power dynamics will be a thing. Jealousy, control issues can absolutely flare up, forcing both sides to confront shadow energy. So when it comes to relationship, though, if you're single, you may feel pulled towards relationships that are consuming, that are taboo, or that are faded. Karmic connections can often show up under a stellium like this as well. So, a good way to go with this energy is communicate with honesty, but not cruelty. As that Mercury in Scorpio cuts deep, so choose your words really carefully and channel Mars's intensity into intimacy, into joint goals, into anything collaborative, like a collaborative project, instead of battles, and honor Lilith's independence. Don't sacrifice your power or authenticity for partnership, but don't dominate either, right? Remember, seventh house, it's the scales. We want to be fair, right? And use this energy to reveal the truth, because this can be a time of healing through shadow work with a partner. Really, really good. But because it's the seventh house, I do want to focus a little bit for those of you dealing with relationship, whether you're single, whether you're dating casually, or whether you're in a marriage relationship. Let's talk about this. So, for those of you who are single, you may feel an intense pull towards someone very magnetic, somebody very mysterious. Remember, Lilith is in there and Scorpio, so maybe somebody a little dangerous, a little taboo. Careful that they're not too toxic, but it can feel super faded, can feel very karmic, could also feel very obsessive. Like this is not a lighthearted crush kind of energy at all, right? And you can easily attract partners who mirror your own shadow traits of power, of control, hidden desires, that initially it'll feel like, oh, we're cut from the same cloth. But then those very things that you identify in that person can end up being the very things that you don't like, right? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's where that karma energy comes in. But Mercury here could mean super deep conversations that attract, that kick up attraction, but also reveal some uncomfortable truths, right? And this is again for those of you who are single, having to do with the dating scene. Lilith here is interesting. Like you could explore unconventional partnerships or reject societal norms about love and about commitment. Well, a lot of you could just be like, I don't need that societal norm type of relationship, whatever that means to you, right? But redefining what relationship means for you can absolutely be going on in this energy if you're single. Now, if you're dating somebody casually, dynamics heat up with this stellium. Passion gets very deep quickly, and relationships can deepen really fast. Strong likelihood of jealousy, secrecy, are we exclusive kinds of conversations. And Mercury makes words sharp, so conversations could easily turn into debates or confessions, depending on what needs to be exposed. And Lilith challenges you to be very open with your desires without shame. Even if it's not a popular truth, even if it's not socially acceptable, right? And also power struggles here could be possible who's leading, who has control. Healthy boundaries are key, especially if you're dating casually and these things are coming up. Understand that this is going to be rooted in fear, of course, because Lilith and Scorpio are involved. So there's going to be a lot of fear there. And so this need to self-protect. And in that desire to self-protect, the distrust and the fears are going to be highlighted. And just understand that that's where it's coming from. So, having the conversations, trying to keep everything as chill as possible, having a lot of empathy and grace while you're having these conversations, that's a good way of using this. Now, for those of you who are in a committed relationship, Mars can definitely rekindle passion here, but it could also spark conflict if frustrations have been simmering. And Mercury demands honesty. So hidden issues, resentments, or unspoken truths may finally surface. Lilith pushes you for authenticity, so you may no longer tolerate compromising your needs just to keep the peace. But if the bond is solid, this can absolutely deepen your intimacy and trust through beautiful, raw, honest conversations. If the relationship is shaky, this transit could certainly bring a reckoning, either a breakthrough or a breaking point. It does depend on where it is. Okay. So just, speak with precision, channel that Mars energy, into shared goals, collaborative efforts, and not unnecessary fights, right? So this stellium in the seventh house for you guys, it's showing up as this mirror of your shadow and your power. So again, you'll likely attract people or situations that push you to face truths that you've been avoiding. And in doing so, though, the good part about this is that that can ultimately serve to transform your partnerships into something a lot more authentic for you. So I hope that was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey Aries, I hope you guys are doing great. Oh wow, oh wow. This stellium, Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith, in Scorpio is pretty intense because it's happening in your eighth house, which is where Scorpio lives. That is where Mars is the traditional ruler, right? Pluto is the modern ruler, but Mars is the traditional ruler. So you're going to be feeling these energies very strongly. And the eighth house is, again, besides it being Scorpio's natural domain, it's like this triple magnification for you of depth, shadow, transformation, where we find sex, conception, intimacy, shared resources, psychological depths, death and birth, cycles having to do with death and rebirth, having to do with power, the occult, right? Because astrology is found in that eighth house. Anything having to do with like psychology, research. So let's break each piece out and just discuss them individually. So let's start with Mars and Scorpio. So this is going to be going on all week. It's not all month. It's not just this stellium. But let's just discuss what this means for you. So Mars in the eighth, Mars is very assertive, right? It's very fire, right? He's a great warrior. So it's going to be a heightened sexual energy for a lot of you, a very raw passion, lots of magnetism for sure. When we're talking about Mars there, be a strong drive to really get into hidden truths, research, psychology, esoteric studies may call upon you, may become way more interested in astrology, way more interested in psychology, um, anything having to do with like, you know, uh, after death experiences, pre-birth experiences, anything like that. Very interested in getting down to the root of an issue connected to something surrounding the idea of conception or anything, and hear me out here, anything having to do with your sexual organs, if there's any sort of challenge that's going on there, trying to get to the root of it. Like what really is the problem here? What's going on? Or there's going to be for a lot of you, there could be a lot of focus in that space. Obviously, it depends on what else is going on in your chart. But the eighth house is also one of the money houses. So this can spark financial intensity around debts, around taxes, around inheritance, around any kind of shared resources as well. So the shadow can be conflicts over money or power in your intimate and closest connections. There could be jealousy, there could be obsession, there could be this very strong desire also for control and to feel understood and heard in the way that you feel like you need to be heard and understood, right? So it's a very heightened energy in that way. Now we're looking at Mercury and Scorpio in the eighth. Thoughts become very probing, very investigative. Again, even a little obsessive, like no stone is left unturned kind of energy. You just really want to understand. So conversations about things that have been considered taboo, meaning anything that's in that eighth house that I discussed, having some sort of uncomfortable conversations and then ending the conversations with this stellium, you're really going to want to kind of have the open conversation about conception, sex, intimacy, money, trauma, death, spirituality, all those eighth house things. And there's a very high potential for uncovering secrets and exposing lies or revealing hidden motivations in other people. You could be revealing them within yourself, but you could also be on the receiving end of hearing it from someone else as well. So I can't even tell you how good this is for therapy, but it's therapy that focuses on doing shadow work. Really great for getting some sort of astrology reading. Um, and I'm not telling you you have to use me, but if you want to use me, my info or my details are is in the description box below all the videos. But it's great for studying astrology, but great for understanding like your Black Moon Lilith, your personal in your natal chart, Chiron, your North and South node, these things that, make us who we are. Very, very good energy. It's going to be easier for you to sort of connect these truths to your life. So that's what's going to be going there with Mercury and Scorpio in the eighth, with the other influences that are going on, right? Now, Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio in the eighth, this brings up taboo, forbidden, repressed aspects of anything that's eighth house related. So it could be sex, it could be intimacy, it could be finances. There could be some shame or hidden desires connected to power, control, vulnerability around finances, um, around intimacy, around, you know, even any sort of shared resources around debt, right? This could bring experiences of feeling othered, you know what I mean? Where like judged in intimate or financial contexts where you're like, hey, that's not fair, you know. Opening these little wounds up though ends up leading to empowerment once you stop apologizing, first of all, for your needs, okay? For what it is that you need. You want to take that out of your language where it's like, look, I'm sorry, but this is what I feel like I need. Like, I'm sorry, but this is what no, 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 don't apologize. It's just like, just say it, right? Because if it's what you need, it doesn't mean that you have to be ego focus and lack empathy and grace, but don't apologize for what your needs are and how it is that you feel or how it is that you are perceiving someone's treatment towards you, right? It's very important to have that conversation, right? Now the stellium in the eighth house, yes, the sexual intimacy is going to skyrocket. Encounters could even feel karmic and transformative and even a little taboo. Have fun with that, like within the realm of reason, I guess, and responsibility, depending on what's going on in your life. But awesome for psychological breakthroughs. I mean, it's really, really possible here to do very healthy, thorough shadow work and therapy to release old wounds and to really call out why something is the way that it is, and then work on healing and work on acceptance. Also financial matters, right? Because it's this eighth house, whether it's loans, inheritances, shared money, can easily become a focus here with the potential for both breakthroughs, but there might have to be some preliminary disputes initially. Relationships may go through some power struggles, but also, deepening intimacy can happen, but only if both of you are willing to face the truth. If only one of you is willing to face the truth, then it's going to be a little more difficult. But it's going to be so heightened that this could either be, breakthroughs or breaking point, in that way. So, Don't fear the shadow of this particular transit. You want to confront the taboo stuff. Nothing, you don't want to bother trying to bury anything, nothing like that. Channel Mars's intensity into healing, into sacred and beautiful sharing when it comes to sexuality or any sort of transformational projects rather than destructive battles in as far as things that you're doing with other. You really want to use Mercury to communicate openly about the deep stuff, the uncomfortable stuff like money, intimacy, fears, instead of letting them fester in silence, because there's no value add in that. And really honor Lilith here by reclaiming the parts of your desire and power that have been shamed or that have been repressed and just being really open and honest about it. So, this stellium for you guys is going to feel like a deep purge, right? It can bring obsession, it can bring some jealousy and some shadow if left unconscious. But if it's embraced and you're very aware, it really does offer some beautiful radical empowerment, very profound intimacy, and real transformation. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. Hi, Pisces. I hope you guys are doing great. So, you guys have this Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith and Scorpio stellium in your ninth house. And this focuses the shift from that eighth house energy, right? Which we were talking about with Aries. Now it's more about higher learning, beliefs, spirituality, philosophy, publishing, law, long distance travel, worldview expansion. Um, Father energy as well, because ninth house is the manifestation of father energy. Ninth house is where God speaks to us, right? It's where Jupiter rules. Sagittarius lives there. So it's a house of expansion, expansion of our mind, expansion of our truth, and really understanding what do we need to do to actually expand our lives more beyond where it is right now. So, before we talk about the stellium, let's break it down into each component, starting with Mars and Scorpio. So, these are going to be happening all month long. They come together on October 22nd. And we're going to be feeling it, several days before that, several days after. That'll be the heightened energy. But don't be surprised if you start feeling it before that. But let's first discuss this Mars and Scorpio in the ninth house. And this can bring a fierce drive to pursue knowledge for you, to pursue wisdom, or some sort of new spiritual, philosophical, political path, right? Because politics, law, legalities, governance also hang out in the ninth house. So you can have a very strong desire to get to the bottom of something, learn more about a religion, learn more about a certain, policy or political agenda. There could be a very strong desire to fight for your beliefs in this energy, which can lead to debates or clashes with others over ideology, over politics, over religion, everything that we're talking about. Energy for travel or exploration, whether it's physical or intellectual, though possibly in an extreme, can be very, very, very transformative in this energy. So maybe you're not able to go away, but there are intellectual ways that we can certainly explore and travel through opening up our mind and learning new things, right? New classes, reading books, opening ourselves up to new experiences. The shadow of this energy, though, just to give you a heads up, can be a little dogmatism, right? You want to be careful of not becoming too dogmatic, where you're pushing your beliefs on other people. We're seeing every other discussion as a battle, right? You want to try to avoid that, right? Not every conversation needs to go into battle mode. But that's that Mars and Scorpio in there. Now, Mercury and Scorpio in the ninth house. This is deep, deep thinking about philosophy, about spirituality, about law, and about moral truth. And there could be this uncovering of hidden knowledge, right? This desire to explore the occult or esoteric teachings, like astrology, or dig deep into taboo academic areas. But whatever it is, it's going to be done with passion, right? Again, getting even more versed and deeper into your religion, more deeper and versed into your belief system. Now, communication styles, just saying, can become very, very sharp, very investigative, very probing. So great for research, great for writing, Excellent for publishing, which by the way, ninth house also is. It's publishing, it's marketing, it's advertising, it's negotiating, it's getting something out there, especially if it's connected to some sort of deep transformative topic, right? If you're dealing with a topic that's very transformative. Now, the shadow here, though, can be very obsessive thinking, because this is what happens when we have these three together. Conspiracy theories can be a thing that you can tend to fall prey to. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm not here to say whether it is, but you're going to be a lot more interested in those things. Well, for a lot of you, speaking in a way that provokes unnecessary conflict, especially around political or religious themes. So again, just a little heads up here. Now, Black Moon Lilith in Scorpio in that ninth house, this is going to challenge you to reject inherited dogma and claim your own truth, right? Whatever religion you were raised with, whatever politics you were raised with, belief system, whatever it was that you were made to think you had to believe. I mean, even if you weren't made, not like it was even shoved down your throat, but that you just maybe realize you believe because it's where you're from, it's how you were raised, whatever it was. Even if it feels unpopular, you're not going to be able to escape it. So there's this attraction to like forbidden or outlawed philosophies. Again, anything that's like non-traditional to what's been traditional for you. So it could be non-traditional spiritualities, non-traditional approaches to governance or anything like that. Now this may reveal also at the same time where shame or repression has actually shaped your worldview, inviting though liberation from that. So part of that could be possible clashes with institutions, whether it's universities or courts or religious systems where you refuse to be silenced, right? This is your absolute belief system, right? And this is what happens when we have that black moon in the ninth house with these other energies going on. Now, just throwing it into the stellium, this is a shakeup of your worldview. You may break free from beliefs that no longer serve you. There will be a lot of verbal intensity present here, right? Debates, discussions around, like I said, religion, politics, philosophy can become super fiery. And yet it's so important that if that were to happen, you have to keep your eye on the end goal. What are you looking to accomplish? Because if you're trying to convince somebody of something that they have cement in their ears to, you're wasting your time, right? So if it could be a healthy debate where both people are involved in it, on the same level, excellent. Have that fiery discussion, but make sure you're in it with somebody who is willing to have that conversation with you. Otherwise, it's just going to become so fiery and we end up being frustrated. But you're going to be on this quest for hidden knowledge, right? Because you're going to be very pulled toward these deeper perspectives. And that could be anything that maybe has been considered taboo for you up to this point, or just not acceptable, right? Within your framework, whatever that means for you. There can be travel with purpose. So if you travel now, it's less about leisure and more about transformation, more about seeking truth, more about spiritual growth for you. So it's very transformative element there if you're able to travel. Then we have, publishing, writing, as I mentioned a moment ago. You could create something really piercing, really controversial, something super powerful that in the end challenges the norms of society, right? Which can be amazing. But you just want to make sure that you're handling it with grace. So this is all about, for you guys, it's all about breaking chains, the chains in your belief systems and stepping into your unapologetic truth. And this can manifest as, like I said, debates, yes, intense study, yes, profound spiritual awakening, absolutely. I mean, these are all the different ways that could end up manifesting. So this is something to be super mindful of. Now, there is this idea of justice, though, that's going to be a real thing for you as well. And justice, or the fight for justice, right? However we want to frame that. Or you might resist. You might resist legal or religious institutions that just feel oppressive. It's going to be one or the other, right? Fighting for justice or just wanting to be away from that oppressive energy, right? That's that Mars energy working in there. And Mercury again would bring the arguments and debates about all of these morality, politics, religion. But Lilith exposes the hypocrisies in it all, the systems of law, the religion, the education, and you just may not to accept anything blindly anymore. So either clashes with authority, whether it's legal, political, or institutional, or becoming an advocate for taboo, marginalized truths is likely going to happen. But let's also just address on, before we wrap this up, the fact that the ninth house as father energy should be considered. So with that Mars energy there can be possible conflicts with father or father figures, could be grandfather or an uncle, power struggles, clashes of will, or sudden confrontations can certainly happen here. Mercury energy can bring deep, probing conversations with father or uncovering hidden truths about paternal lineage. And Lilith brings up shadow dynamics regarding father, where his authority suppressed your truth or where family carried taboo or unspoken patterns. So, healing or confrontation that frees you from any sort of inherited dogma will be going on. You may redefine your relationship with paternal energy, with authority in general, having to do with guidance, in general. So, a good way to go here, it's a real truth quest for you guys, particularly because it's the ninth house of truth. But a good way to go here is to use Mars's energy to explore new ideas, new ideologies, new horizons, but avoid imposing your truth on other people. And you want to use Mercury for research and writing because your insights can be so transformative and so sharp and so on point. And you also want to let Lilith guide you toward owning your truth, even if it defies tradition or social approval. But stay mindful of burnout because intellectual battles with this energy and obsessive study can become like all consuming, right? Where it's like you're so focused, you're burning the candle at both ends. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey Aquarius, so you guys have this Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon Lilith stellium happening in your 10th house. This is a very charged, powerful transit for you guys because this is about career, public reputation, standing in the world, meaning like your public image. This is the house of legacy, of achievement. It's also the manifestation of mother energy as well, right? So transits here will often push you into like visibility or force changes in professional structures, or it could also force changes in the dynamic with mother energy. So just keep in mind, Scorpio energy is very deep, intense, transformative, very secretive, sometimes confrontational. Scorpio does not do surface level anything, right? It wants truth, it wants power, and it wants lasting impact. So we have this Mars, Mercury, and Black Moon in there. So let's just discuss each one independently. That Mars energy is all about drive and ambition and aggression and initiative. And in Scorpio, it's traditional domicile because Mars, it was the traditional ruler. Pluto is the modern ruler who we primarily recognize. That Mars energy still does hang out in there, and Mars is potent here. Right? It's strategic. He's relentless. He's not afraid of conflict, right? And that Mercury energy in there, Mercury, communication, thinking, networking, decision making. In Scorpio, Mercury is probing. He's sharp. He's investigative. He's suspicious, sometimes intense, always in that energy. And then we have Black Moon Lilith, symbolizing the shadow self, repressed raw rage, right? Anger, frustration, the desire for authenticity, rejection of control. Lilith does not like to be, under anybody's thumb. So in Scorpio, Lilith is uncompromising, fearless, and confronts power struggles pretty much head on. So, what this stellium means for you guys when it comes to your career and your reputation, there could be a shift. This can bring powerful moves in your public life. You may feel compelled to step into a more authentic, unapologetic version of yourself in career matters. Authority figures, bosses, or public opinion may trigger some sort of power struggle. when it comes to your voice and your influence. Mercury here sharpens your words. So you may cut through facades and the BS and the nonsense with great precision. People may see you as intimidating, persuasive. Other people might see you as a little provocative, but communication in professional spaces can be transformative, but also confrontational. And I think there is a really good way of using this. If it ends up being confrontational, it can be transformative if there's honesty and there's grace. If there are hot heads screaming at each other, then no. But if there's grace and there's empathy and there's conversation, this can absolutely be a great thing. Now, there is also this energy of ambition and conflicts because Mars fuels your drive for success, but it also increases your energy for competitiveness. So you might encounter conflicts in leadership, workplace politics, authority challenges, where it's just like, I can't believe this nonsense is happening again, right? And Lilith, that shadow, when it comes to your public image, you may be forced to confront what you've hidden in order to be taken seriously. So this can involve speaking truth to power or reclaiming space where you've been silent. So I can tell you right now, Aquarius, if you've been staying quiet in work, if you've been just, going along to get along and all that stuff, there are going to be some sort of circumstances that are going to push you to be a lot more vocal about what's been going on, right? And there are transformational opportunities, though, because without question, this transit can push you to break free from career patterns where you've compromised too much. It does ask you the big question: how much power are you giving away to others in order to look good, in order to keep the peace? Right? So, know the challenges, know that there's risk of conflict with authority, whether it's boss or whether it's parent energy, any sort of institution. Again, remember, 10th house is very connected to the manifestation of mother energy. There is a potential conflict for public controversy or backlash if you speak too bluntly out there. Feelings of being misunderstood can be a thing. Fear of being judged too harshly. Obsession with like the control or winning element in some sort of career matters. Okay, fine. Those are some challenges. Everything has challenges, everything has opportunities. So opportunity here is increased drive and magnetism in that 10th house energy in professional spaces. Increased drive and magnetism to be able to clear something up when it comes to your long-term path, clear something up connected to mother energy. There is a chance to reclaim your voice and your influence in the public sphere. First of all, so I don't want you to worry too much about that. Just be mindful of your words, right? You also have the opportunity to deepen strategic insight here. So you can cut through the politics and all that nonsense to see hidden agendas, like what's really going on. And there's a very strong potential to become a truth teller, a reformer, and a leader in your field. So in the end, for you guys, this stellium in Scorpio in the 10th, it's going to bring a lot of intensity, a lot of ambition, deep transformation to your public life. It can empower you, certainly, to step into your truth, to pursue your career goals with a relentless focus. But it also does ask you, Aquarius, to be mindful of how you use your words and the power in the public arena, right? So choose your words carefully, but make sure that you're using your words in order to choose your words. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to stay quiet in this energy, particularly if, you're starting to feel something build up and simmer, right? You guys are an air energy. So patiently sit down and say, how can I best strategize my words to communicate what needs to be addressed here, right? Because you have such good energy during this stellium to actually do it. But it's going to be a heated energy that's going to motivate it. All right. So I want to be honest about that. Okay, my friends. So I hope this was helpful in some way. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Hey Capricorn, I hope you guys are doing great. So let's talk about this Mars Mercury, Black Moon Lilith Stellium in Scorpio. This is going to be transiting in your 11th house. 11th house of friends, allies, groups, communities, networks, social causes, long-term goals, your future vision. It's where we find belonging, alliances, influence in wider society. As far as the people who hang out in the 11th house, it would be older siblings, stepchildren, grandchildren, daughter-in-law, son-in-law. Um, Anything else with the 11th house? Yeah, it's the masses as well. Okay. So we have the Scorpio flavor that's going to be very lit up, which is very intense, very penetrating, very transformative and secretive, sometimes a little power driven, right? So this can bring deep bonds or power struggles within groups. Now keep in mind the 11th opposes the 5th. So there could be some sort of opposition that we're going on that's going on. It could have to do with some sort of project that you are involved in, some sort of entrepreneurial effort that you are involved in, something connected to your children as well. Now, with that Mars energy in there, Mars in the 11th, there's drive to action, conflict, ambition. Scorpio is all about being strategic and relentless, right? So, we have that heightened energy, but Mercury wants to communicate, wants to connect through ideas, very connected to networking and exchanges. And in Scorpio, again, it's probing, it's blunt, but there's also a secretive energy about it. And Lilith being in there, there is this taboo energy, right? But one thing about Lilith, she admires authenticity. She's very rebellious against the norm, right? So any sort of shadow material is going to be brought up, right? Raw truth is going to be brought up to be looked at. And in the 11th, this can challenge group dynamics and collective values because there is a little bit of a truth teller energy about this. I can tell you as a Capricorn rising, I already feel this. I am feeling it in a big way, especially like the past 2 days. And today is Sunday the 5th. This is not hitting until the 22nd. That's because we already have Mars and, the Mars Mercury element is already all vibing in the 11th house, right? But it's when they all become exact on the 22nd. That's the reason I'm making the video. But just understand that we're going to be feeling it before that. So what does this stellium bring? Well, group dynamic intensity. Absolutely. Now you may become super active in like a social or professional group, something going on with some sort of project, but you can also encounter conflicts and rivalries and power struggles within that dynamic. Group projects could feel charged, either magnetic and amazing and transformative or volatile, right? A lot of this does depend also on what's going on in your own personal birth chart, but talk about speaking an uncomfortable truth. You are going to be the megaphone for that because Mercury here wants to voice what others keep quiet. And with Lilith, your words may cut through group illusions, but also risk alienating some people. So we have to make sure that we're careful with how we're communicating information. Now, when it comes to leadership and influence within communities, Mars does fuel this drive to take initiative when it comes to like collectives. So maybe stepping into a leadership or an activist role can be very, very likely, but the energy can also manifest as clashes to authority within those organizations or within friend circles. So on the one hand, you're being elevated to be in charge, but then there could be these clashes or these power struggles that are almost going on in what could feel almost like a subtext kind of way. Now, friendships could also be tested at this time where hidden resentments and jealousy or some sort of unspoken dynamic can come to light. And Lilith can make you super uncompromising, right? In this energy. Only very authentic bonds are going to make it through this, right? This is, those who've been watching me for a while know I really like the expression shaking the dead wood off the tree because sometimes it's the best saying when it's, what is not real and firm in your life needs to be just kind of discarded, and things that are still standing and still there that are authentic, who have your back, that is meant to be on your path, those bonds become even stronger, right? Even stronger. So only if there's a little wonkiness in the connection will there be challenge. But if that's not the case, if everybody's on firm footing, you're not going to ultimately end up having that energy. But future visions get pretty intense here. You're going to become very serious about the future. And this 11th is the 11th house of hopes and ideals and future goals. So this stellium can certainly spark a transformative new vision for a new path ahead, but it may also force you to let go of outdated dreams and alliances that just simply no longer fit within the context of your life and where it is that you're looking to go. So, like everything, we have some challenges and then we have some opportunities. And some of the tricky energies here could be falling into drama or manipulation within friend group. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. And if somebody's saying, oh, you know what, so and so said blah, blah, blah about you, and da 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 da, unless it's coming straight from the horse's mouth, don't even get sucked down that rabbit hole. You also want to be careful of saying things. Remember that Mercury and Lilith energy that others find too raw, too taboo, too off-putting, too like, oh my gosh, how dare you say that? It feels like your truth, but just be mindful of your audience, right? And you also want to risk burnout in this energy, right? If you try to fight every single battle, it's going to be exhausted. So don't even deal with that. Feeling like an outsider can also be a thing. If your truth doesn't align with everybody else's thoughts or truth or experiences, you could certainly feel like an outsider there. And you're not, but you have your own mind, and especially Lilith in there really wants to fight against any sort of like restrictive norm, right? Now, the opportunities here are great for taking bold magnetic leadership role in a group or a cause. Really good there. It's also very good for building deep transformative alliances and friendships. Very good there. Using strategic communication, you can heavily influence networks of people, future directions that you're going, and make a great, like making contacts kind of energy, right? Excellent for that. And breaking free from like any kind of groupthink and just claiming your own vision. You can't have a stellium with Black Moon Lilith and not create your own vision, right? So in the end, for you guys in this 11th house, this is going to light up themes again of friendship networks, your future path with intensity and transformation. And you may feel compelled to speak truth to power in group settings, take initiatives in collective spaces, or confront shadows within friendships. This is all likely going to be happening. The key here is to use the sharpness of Mars and Mercury and Lilith together strategically rather than destructively. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye. Hey, Sagittarius, I hope you guys are doing great. So you have the Mars, Mercury, Black Moon, Lilith, Stellium going through the house of the hidden, the house behind the veil, and that would be the 12th house. And this it's unlike the visible external houses here. It's the most hidden, subtle, inward-facing zone, often associated with the unconscious. It's very connected to the subconscious as well. Spiritual practices, solitude, secrets, sleep, endings, healing. What else is the 12th house? Self-undoing. So with intense planets like Mars, Mercury, and Lilith in Scorpio, the focus turns inward and underground for you, right? In that 12th house. Again, now in the sign of Scorpio, deep transformation, intensity, power, shadows, secrets, catharsis. Now we have Mars in that Scorpio energy in the 12th. This is drive, action, and conflict. And here the energy can become repressed or turned inward, sometimes surfacing as hidden anger or unconscious impulses, right? It can to other people. So you're feeling it repressed internally, but it comes up as hidden anger. So you can absolutely fly off the handle and not even understand why, right? Or have some sort of impulse to do something that maybe not the best thing for you, but it's this deep, deep impulse. So you might not even understand it in the moment. And then with that Mercury in the 12th in Scorpio, thinking, communication, processing information in that 12th house, Mercury digs deep, deep, deep into the subconscious or speaks indirectly. So you're getting these messages, these subtext narratives, which are pushing with that Mars energy, right? Really creating these impulses and and waking up any kind of hidden anger that hasn't been dealt with, right? I know Black Moon Lilith in the 12th in Scorpio in there, right? Remember, she's all about shadow self, taboo, rebellion, raw truth. And in the 12th house, Lilith exposes buried fears or hidden truths that you've avoided. So when we add these all together, this stellium ends up bringing several things. First, your shadow work is certainly going to be intensified. So Scorpio already deals with the hidden and the transformative. And in the 12th, they could push you into even deeper inner exploration, therapy, spiritual work, hidden patterns of anger, Mars, thought, Mercury, or repression, Lilith, may demand attention. If you feel like you've been victimized in any way by a person and or a situation, this is going to come up to the surface to be looked at. Now, you might even converse about that circumstance in your life. It's going to show up a little differently, though. It's going to show up on more of an emotional level, right? Because this stellium is also going to bring a lot of psychic and intuitive insights, especially with that Mercury and Lilith in the 12th. Your intuition is going to be very sharpened. There's going to be a lot of dream symbolism going on, subtle perception of things. You're going to be vibing things perhaps a little before they happen. You guys can tend to do that anyway, just because you have Scorpio in the 12th. You become very, very intuitive in that way, but it's going to be amped up, right? Just because of the stellium, right? So you might find yourself decoding hidden motives or messages beneath the surface, analyzing even to the point of obsessiveness, what someone said, how they said it, why they said it, all of this, right? Not being able to shake a feeling, right? But this is all going to be going on inside of you, because there's going to be so many realizations popping, because this is also going to reveal some secrets, especially things long buried may end up coming to light. And this could be your own secrets, or it can be those of others, right? The secrets are coming out. And Lilith here can push these taboo topics into awareness, even if they feel uncomfortable. So taboo topics that could be like Scorpionic connected to Lilith in that 12th house could be anything having to do with like secret love affairs, anything connected to things you do in private, pornography, whatever it would be, that would be considered taboo according to societal standards, or just your own subjective understanding of that. But there's this revelation, there is this revealing of this here that's gotta, and even if it's uncomfortable, it's going to be coming out, right? There's going to be a very strong desire to retreat into solitude. And this is a time where pulling back from the external hustle may actually truly help you recharge. And this stellium can manifest in some sort of like retreat or some sort of spiritual practice, or just needing some time alone to just sort of process some sort of transformation, right? Now, the tricky challenges could be that you may end up experiencing, again, this internalized anger, which is Mars, right? And of course, that could lead to stress. This could lead to health issues or suppressed frustration. You want to remember that the 12th house opposes the 6th house of health. Neptune rules the 12th house, which is the house of disease and disease, right? That's where Pisces lives. So we just want to be mindful of that, right? That the stress is not good for us. So do something to actually get it out, whether it's exercising, communicating, therapy, journaling, meditating, prayer, whatever it is. You could, while you're going through this, feel isolated, feel misunderstood, as if you're carrying like unseen burdens on your shoulders. And it's going to feel very, very real to you. There is a risk of self-sabotage or undermining yourself unconsciously. You want to be careful here, right? Where you want to make sure that you're not sabotaging a relationship because you're upset with yourself, sabotaging any kind of relationship, sabotaging a work situation based on fear, right? Because this will bring communication difficulties. Mercury here can make you feel unheard, or that your words don't land clearly, right? And so when you feel like that, it can be so frustrating. It's like, what are they not understanding? I feel like I'm being really clear, right? So just be mindful of this, because even though there are some challenges that can certainly manifest, there are opportunities. There's a very strong opportunity for healing and transformation, confronting these hidden patterns, confronting traumas, or any sort of taboo, for true, genuine release, like to seriously just get rid of it. Lots of spiritual growth can happen here, where deepened meditation, deepened prayer, dream work, um, mystical experiences. Lots of creative inspiration can be coming forth for you. As the 12th house is very, very, very fertile for art, for poetry, anything creative, channeling your unconscious material into expression. This is an excellent energy for trying to manifest something. Lots of psychological insight is another opportunity of this transit where you have a chance to see and name the shadows, right, within yourself and others that maybe you weren't able to really face before, or you weren't really able to articulate before. So in the end, this is going to bring an intensity into that unconscious realm. So it's a great period again for shadow work, for inner healing, for retreat, very emphasized in this space. And while it could feel heavy, it could feel a little isolating at times, it's a very powerful opportunity to uncover any kind of like hidden truths, strengthen your intuition, and just kind of come out on the other side with this new sense of clarity and spiritual power as we go into the month of November. So I hope this was helpful in some way. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.